I'm going to teach you the best lessons from the book How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. But before that, here's a fable about the sun and the wind from the book. They quarrelled about who was stronger, and the wind said, "I'll prove I am. See that old man down there with a coat? I bet I can make him take his coat off faster than you can." So the sun went behind a cloud, and the wind blew until it was almost a tornado. But the harder it blew, the tighter the old man wrapped his coat around him. Finally, the wind calmed down and gave up. The sun came out from behind the cloud and smiled kindly on the old man. He mopped his brow and pulled his coat off. The sun told the wind, gentleness and friendliness were always stronger than fury and force. Friendliness and appreciation can make people change their minds more readily than storming at them can. This video will show you how to be more like the sun when interacting with people, which means you will be able to influence them. At first it may seem like a book on how to manipulate people. However, if you follow the lessons, you'll actually become a much nicer person to be around. So here are the top 5. Lesson 1. Become genuinely interested in other people. Dale Carnegie said you can make more friends in 2 months becoming interested in other people than you can make in 2 years by trying to make other people interested in you. Most people believe that getting someone to like them is all about impressing the other person. Talk about exciting things that you've done in your life and the other person will find it so interesting that they want to spend more time with you. This is far from true. The most important thing to do is to make the other person feel they are important. The easiest way to do this, and to be genuinely more charismatic, is to realise that every person is very important. You must be sincere. If you are just making the other person feel important for your own gain, they will see through it, because the majority of our communication is non-verbal. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. When talking to someone, talk about things they are interested in and they will be happy to talk to you for a long time. Try to think of something that you know the other person really enjoys, but you also enjoy. This way you'll enjoy the conversation too. If you find that you really don't share much in common with the other person, what you can do is ask them to explain something you know they know a lot about and take interest in learning new things from them. Also, asking them to teach you something will make them feel very important and respected by you. So, become genuinely interested in other people. Lesson 2. A person's name is the sweetest sound they can ever hear. Do you ever ask someone's name and literally 10 seconds later you can't remember it? They may as well never have said it because you weren't really listening. If this is you, then this is something you really need to change, because remembering names is extremely useful. Stop saying the classic phrase, "Oh, I'm terrible with names." You just haven't learnt yet. So how do you get better at remembering names? The first thing to change is how much you value remembering names. Knowing a person's name is so useful, and if you remember it after being told it only once, this makes the other person instantly feel very important, which links to lesson 1. Think about how it makes you feel when someone forgets your name. It makes you feel like they don't care. Another simple way is to say it back to the other person. If you meet someone called Mark, say, "Hello Mark, it's nice to meet you." Then you instantly get to hear it twice. Also, it gets you into the habit of fully listening when people tell you their name, because otherwise you won't be able to say it back to them. It's fine to ask them to repeat their name a few times if you didn't quite hear it, because it shows that you are actively trying to remember it and that you care about meeting them. It shows you want to remember who they are, which again makes them feel important. Another way is to associate an image with them. People often say, "I never forget a face, but I'm terrible with names." This is because people find it much easier to remember images than words. Create some kind of image that you can associate with the person, and that will help you remember their name. For example, if the person's name is Mark, imagine getting a big red pen and marking an X on his head. If the person's name is Jack, imagine him doing jumping jacks in front of you. The more vivid the image, the more it will stick in your head. If the image is childish or rude, it will stick even more. You never need to tell the other person, so it doesn't matter what image you associate with them. You could imagine Jack doing jumping jacks naked in front of you. It feels very odd, but that image will definitely stick in your head, so you'll be able to remember his name much easier. So a person's name is the sweetest sound they can ever hear. Lesson 3. Don't criticise, condemn, or complain. This is pretty obvious, but nobody wants to be around someone who is constantly complaining or moaning. Successful people fill their lives with so many positive things and work towards things so meaningful that they literally don't have enough time to moan. Search for the lessons in bad situations. You'll become successful so much faster when you start turning your losses into wins. Never criticise or make fun of other people for what they are doing. When you joke about something that someone else is doing, it actually is really detrimental to your own confidence. The reason for this is because when you're doing something, you'll be constantly wondering who's making fun of you. If you never make fun of others and always encourage them to do the things they love, no matter how strange they are, then you will begin to have a group of people that are supporting you in all your endeavours also. One thing I hear people complaining about a lot is money. Losing money, something costing too much, someone not paying them back money they owe, wasting money on something that turned out to be rubbish. When I look at the money I have, I always know at least a few £100 every now and then will be completely wasted. It's just wasted money and it isn't that bad. Aiming for 100% accuracy with all your purchases and never losing any money and always staying on top of people who owe you money is really unrealistic. It's much more detrimental to keep thinking about how much it has annoyed you. The annoyance is much worse than the actual financial loss, and you gain nothing from feeling annoyed about it, except that you will sometimes make mistakes and lose money. Move on. So, don't criticise, condemn or complain. Lesson 4. Arousing the other person and eager want. Here's a nice story to explain this one. Mike has a son called Toby. Toby is 5 years old and just got into the habit of drawing on the walls. This makes Mike really angry, and his initial response is to shout at Toby and tell him that he is a bad boy and that he should never do that ever again. Toby will obviously dislike being shouted at, and he might feel resentment towards his dad. Toby has now got an image of himself as being bad and has a strong feeling of resentment. The next time Toby has a crayon in his hand, he will think back to what his dad said to him. His dad labelled him as bad. Toby knows that a bad boy would write on the walls. Also, his dad made him feel stupid. So Toby's resentment, along with his new label and image of himself, will make him much more likely to draw on the wall despite his dad and feel he's got his own back and regain some pride. The other approach that Mike could have taken with Toby is to arouse in the other person an eager want. When Mike walked into the room to find Toby drawing on the wall, he could have stayed calm, explained that drawing on the wall is a bad thing to do. Mike can say to Toby that he knows Toby is a good boy and that he's clever enough to know not to do it again. He finishes by saying, "Big boys don't draw on walls, do they, Toby? You're a big boy, aren't you?" This time, Toby has been labelled as a big boy and a good boy who is clever. When he thinks about drawing on a wall again, he will think about how he wants to continue to be seen as a big boy, and so will be much more likely not to draw on the wall. So in any situation where you want another person to do something, don't force them. Spend time thinking about how to make them want what you want. This is much more effective. So, arouse in the other person an eager want. Lesson 5. If you're wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. Have you ever been in the situation where someone's telling you you are wrong about something and you get a little angry? Because you are angry, you defend your point of view much more intensely, but the stupid thing is that part of you completely agrees with what they are saying and you know that they are right. Rather than admitting that you are wrong, you start to throw out points to support your argument that get more and more ridiculous. This is because you are experiencing a thing called cognitive dissonance, which is when your brain is holding two opposing thoughts and can't decide which one is correct. In this instance, the two thoughts would be that you're right and the other thought is that you're wrong. Our brains really dislike cognitive dissonance, so what we do to solve this is choose one thought and go 100% into it and accept nothing else. Like digging yourself into a trench. You refuse to back down from your opinion no matter how ridiculous you know it is. So how do you stop doing this? Practice. Just notice that it happens to you and understand that it's happened before and that you regretted it afterwards. There's a story in the book. A man is walking his dog in a park. The rule is dogs must be kept on a lead at all times. The man doesn't see the sign and his dog isn't on a lead. The park warden sees him and goes over and tells the man the rule and says if the man does it again, he will give him a fine. The next week, the man again forgets to put his dog on a lead and the park warden comes over, but before he can speak, the man says, "Sorry warden, I've broken the rules, my dog is not on a lead. How much is the fine? I must pay it." The warden says, "Oh, well, it's okay, I'll let you off this time, but don't forget again." And he leaves the man. If the man had argued with the warden would have wanted to protect his ego and sense of importance by ensuring the man got a fine. However, because the man was quick to admit he was wrong and was open to paying the fine, the warden wasn't able to show his importance, and so instead, to feel a sense of power, he wanted to show mercy. Showing he had the power to remove the fine from the man made the warden feel more important than if the man had paid the fine. So when you know you are wrong, admit it as quickly as you can. If you find it hard, practice meditating. When I meditate, I imagine my thoughts floating in a ball in front of me, and they can only get out if I want to look at them. It allows me to see my thoughts from an outsider perspective and not feel emotionally connected to them. This means if I get into a situation where I feel angry, I can imagine the ball, stop, and admit that I am wrong. I'm not perfect, and it doesn't happen every time, but it does really help. So if you're wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically.